ladies and gentlemen, listen to me. Right now, not tomorrow, not next Monday, right now, most people drift into their week. They wake up slow, they react to life, they check their phones, and before they know it, the week owns them. But what if you flip that script? What if you attacked your week with intensity, clarity, and purpose? Because I'm telling you, the way you start your week determines the way you live your life. What if I told you that the first hour of your day is quietly deciding the direction of your entire life? Most people don't even realize it. They wake up, grab their phone, scroll through other people's lives, react to messages, and before they've even taken a full breath, they've surrendered control. And then they wonder why they feel behind, overwhelmed, and stuck. The truth is simple and a little uncomfortable. If you don't take ownership of your morning, someone or something else will. The moment your eyes open, you are standing at a critical point of power. This is not just another routine. It's a psychological reset, a chance to program your focus, your energy, and your standards. High performers don't leave this to chance. They're intentional. They decide how they feel before the world tells them how to feel. Instead of drifting, they direct. Instead of reacting, they create. Energy is the currency here. You can have all the goals in the world, but without energy, they stay as ideas. That's why movement is non-negotiable. When you move your body with intensity, even for a short time, you shift your physiology. And that shift sends a powerful signal to your brain, I am in control. It's not about fitness alone. It's about identity. You're no longer someone who hesitates. You're someone who acts. But it doesn't stop with the body. Your focus needs direction. Where your attention goes, your life follows. If your first inputs of the day are noise, negativity, or comparison, you've already diluted your potential. Instead, you must feed your mind with intention, clear goals, strong purpose, and a vision that excites you. Ask yourself, what must I make happen today? And, more importantly, who must I become to make it happen? That question alone can shift your entire state. Here's the hook most people miss. Confidence isn't something you wait to feel. It's something you build through action, especially in the morning. Every small promise you keep early in the day, getting up on time, moving your body, focusing your mind, becomes evidence. Evidence that you are disciplined, evidence that you follow through, and that evidence compounds. By the time the world demands something from you, you've already proven to yourself that you can deliver. There's also a hidden psychological edge in starting strong. When you win early, your brain looks for more wins. It begins to expect success instead of fearing failure. That expectation shapes your decisions, your communication, and your resilience. Suddenly, challenges don't feel like threats. They feel like opportunities to confirm who you are becoming. I must be clear, this isn't about perfection. You're not trying to build a flawless routine. You're building consistency and control. Even on the days when you don't feel like it, especially on those days, you show up. Because discipline in the morning eliminates regret later. It creates momentum that carries into every meeting, every task, every interaction. So when that alarm goes off, understand what's really happening. It's not just a signal to wake up. It's a test of whether you will lead your life or follow your habits. And every time you choose to rise with intention, you're not just starting your day. You're strengthening the person you're becoming. Let's get something straight right away. Your life is not controlled by your goals, your circumstances, or even your past. It is controlled by one thing, the standards you are willing to live with. And here's the uncomfortable question. What have you been tolerating that is quietly keeping you stuck? Because whatever you tolerate, you validate, and whatever you validate becomes your reality. Most people don't have a lack of desire, they have a lack of standards. They say they want success, growth, confidence, financial freedom, but their daily actions tell a different story. They hit snooze. They delay decisions, they settle for good enough, and then they wonder why nothing changes. The truth is powerful and a bit confronting. You don't get what you want in life, you get what you accept. Think about this for a moment. If showing up late is something you allow yourself to do, it becomes your identity. If quitting when things get hard feels acceptable, it becomes your pattern. Standards are not just preferences, they are non-negotiables. They define what you will and will not allow in your behavior, your environment, and your mindset. And the moment you raise them, everything begins to shift. Here's the hook. Change doesn't start when you feel ready. It starts when you become unwilling to stay the same. There's a moment in every transformation where something clicks, where average becomes painful, not uncomfortable, painful, where procrastination feels heavier than action, where excuses start to sound like lies you refuse to believe anymore, that moment is where your new life begins. Raising your standards is not about adding more pressure. It's about removing the option to stay small. It's about deciding that certain behaviors are no longer part of who you are. You don't try to be disciplined. You become someone who doesn't negotiate with discipline. You don't ton to be consistent. You become someone who shows up no matter what. Identity drives behavior, and standards shape identity. And let's address the biggest trap: excuses. They are incredibly convincing, aren't they? I'm tired. I'll start tomorrow. I don't have time. But here's the truth most people avoid. Excuses are simply a reflection of low standards dressed up as reasons. Because when your standards are high enough, you find a way, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. Another powerful shift happens when you raise your standards. You begin to change what you focus on. Instead of asking, why is this so hard? You start asking, what's required of me right now? That question puts you back in control. It moves you from victim thinking to leadership thinking. And leadership, at its core, begins with leading yourself. There's also a ripple effect. When you raise your standards, you start attracting different opportunities, different people, and different results. Why? Because you're operating at a different level. You're no longer available for mediocrity. You don't entertain distractions the same way. You don't engage in habits that pull you backward. You become selective, and that selectiveness is power. Well, let's be clear. This is not a one-time decision. Raising your standards is a daily commitment. Every choice you make either reinforces your new standard or weakens it. Every action is a vote for the person you are becoming, and over time, those votes build an identity that is strong, consistent, and undeniable. So the real question isn't whether you're capable of more, you are. The real question is whether you're willing to demand more from yourself than you ever have before. Because the moment you stop negotiating with your excuses and start honoring your standards, your entire life begins to rise to meet you. The pull, let's challenge a belief that holds so many people back. You do not need more time to think. You need the courage to act. Perfection is one of the most convincing lies ever sold. It whispers, wait a little longer, plan a little more, get everything just right. But while you're waiting, life is moving. Opportunities are shifting, and the cost of hesitation is far greater than the cost of imperfect action. Here's a powerful question. How many ideas have you delayed because you didn't feel ready? How many opportunities have passed because you were trying to eliminate every possible risk? The truth is, clarity is not something you find before action. It's something you discover through action. You cannot think your way into confidence. You have to move your way into it. There's a psychological shift that happens the moment you take action. Even small, imperfect steps create momentum, and momentum changes everything. When you move forward, your brain begins to adapt. It learns, it adjusts, it finds solutions you can never see while standing still. But when you stay in planning mode, your mind often amplifies fear, overanalyzes outcomes, and creates problems that don't even exist yet. Think about the most successful individuals you admire. Do you really believe they had everything figured out before they started? Or did they step forward, make mistakes, learn quickly, and adjust along the way? Progress is messy, growth is unpredictable, but action is what separates those who dream from those who achieve. Here's the hook. Waiting for the perfect moment is actually a form of fear disguised as logic. It feels responsible. It feels safe. But in reality, it's keeping you stuck. Because perfection is not a requirement for success. Progress is. And progress only happens when you're willing to take action despite uncertainty. Another important truth. Action builds evidence. Every step you take, no matter how small, proves to you that you're capable. It reduces doubt and increases belief. On the other hand, inaction reinforces hesitation. The longer you wait, the harder it becomes to start. That's why the first move is always the most important. It breaks the pattern. And let's talk about mistakes, because this is where many people hold back. Mistakes are not the opposite of success. They are part of the process. Every mistake contains feedback. Every failure carries information. When you act, you gather data. When you wait, you gather doubt. Which one do you think serves your growth? There's also a level of energy that comes from decisive action. When you make a decision and follow it with immediate movement, you create a sense of control and direction. You stop feeling stuck because you are no longer stuck. You are engaged, you are learning, and you are evolving in real time. Now consider this. What would happen if you committed to taking one bold action today instead of waiting for the perfect plan? What if you shifted your mindset from what if it goes wrong to what can I learn from this? That single shift can unlock opportunities you've been postponing for far too long. Because at the end of the day, ideas alone do not change your life. Intentions alone do not create results. It is action, consistent, persistent, and sometimes uncomfortable action that transforms potential into reality. And the moment you stop waiting and start moving, everything begins to change. Most people go through their day believing their emotions just happen to them. They say, I feel tired, I feel stressed, I'm not in the mood, as if these states are fixed, uncontrollable forces. But what if that belief is the very thing holding you back? What if your emotions are not something you endure, but something you create? Because the truth is, the quality of your life is directly tied to the state you choose to live in. Here's the shift. Your state is a combination of your physiology, your focus, and your language. Change any one of these, and you begin to change how you feel. Change all three, and you can transform your entire experience in a matter of moments. This is not theory. This is a practical tool used by top performers across every field. They don't wait to feel motivated. They generate the state they need. Let's start with physiology. Your body is not just a reflection of how you feel. It is a driver of how you feel. The way you stand, the way you breathe, the energy in your movement, all of it sends signals to your brain. Slouch your shoulders, slow your breathing, and your mind follows with low energy and hesitation. Stand tall, breathe deeply, move with intention, and suddenly your mental state begins to elevate. It sounds simple, but it's powerful. Your body can shift your mind faster than your thoughts alone ever could. Now consider focus. What you focus on consistently shapes your emotional state. If your attention is locked on problems, limitations, and worst-case scenarios, your brain will amplify stress and uncertainty. But if you deliberately shift your focus towards solutions, opportunities, and what you can control, your emotional experience begins to change. The situation may be the same, but your interpretation, and therefore your response, is entirely different. Here's the hook most people overlook. You are always asking yourself questions, whether you realize it or not. And the questions you ask determine your focus. Ask, why is this happening to me? And you'll feel powerless. Ask, what can I do about this right now? And you immediately move into a position of control. Better questions create better states, and better states lead to better decisions. Language is another critical factor. The words you use both internally and externally shape how you experience reality. When you say I'm overwhelmed, you reinforce a sense of pressure and limitation. But if you shift your language to I'm challenged and I'm finding a way through, you create a different emotional response. The situation hasn't changed, but your perception and therefore your performance there's also a level of responsibility that comes with this understanding. Once you realize you can influence your state, you can no longer blame, but it's also incredibly empowering because if you are the source of your state, then you are also the solution. You are environment, your schedule, or other people for how you feel. That might sound intense. Think about moments in your life when you felt unstoppable, confident, focused, energized. Those moments didn't happen by accident. Something in your physiology, focus, or language aligned to create that state. The key is learning how to access it intentionally, not randomly. Because when you can shift your state at will, you gain an advantage that most people never develop. And here's where it becomes transformational. Your state doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone around you. Your energy influences conversations, decisions, and outcomes. When you show up with clarity and certainty, people respond differently. Opportunities open, challenges become manageable, results improve. So instead of waiting for the right mood, the right moment, or the right circumstances, you take control. You adjust your body, redirect your focus, and upgrade your language. And in doing so, you move from reacting to life to actively shaping it in real time. There's a pattern that quietly shapes outcomes more than most people realize. How you begin often determines how you finish. Yet so many individuals underestimate the power of a strong start. They ease into their week, delay effort, and assume they can make up for it later. But here's the truth. Momentum doesn't wait for you. It either works for you or against you, and the direction is set far earlier than you think. Consider this. When you start your week with hesitation low energy, or distraction, you're not just losing a few hours, you're creating a chain reaction. Tasks get pushed, decisions get delayed, pressure builds, and by midweek, you're no longer leading, you're reacting. That sense of being behind doesn't come from nowhere. It's built in the early moments when you chose not to engage fully. Now flip that. Imagine stepping into your week with clarity, urgency, and purpose. You don't drift into Monday, you attack it, you identify your priorities, you take decisive action, and you create early wins. Those wins are not just tasks completed, they are psychological signals. They tell your brain, we are in control, we are moving forward. And once that signal is established, your mind begins to expect progress instead of resistance. Here's the hook. Success is not built at the end of the week under pressure. It's built at the beginning with intention. Waiting until you feel urgency is already too late. High performers create urgency before it is forced upon them. They don't rely on deadlines to push them. They use discipline to pull themselves forward. There's also a compounding effect at play. Every focused action you take early in the week reduces the burden later. Instead of accumulating stress, you're building space to think clearly, adapt strategically, and perform at a higher level. While others are scrambling to catch up, you're refining, improving, and expanding. But let's address the common trap. People often believe they can recover from a slow start. And while it's possible, it comes at a cost. You would spend more energy, you operate under pressure, and your decisions are often reactive rather than intentional. It's like trying to sprint after walking too long. You can do it, but it drains you. A strong start eliminates that struggle. It keeps you in rhythm. Energy plays a critical role here. When you begin with intensity, you set a standard for your own performance. That energy carries forward. It influences how you approach challenges, how you communicate, and how you solve problems. On the other hand, when you start passively, it's difficult to suddenly switch into high performance mode. Your state follows your initial pattern. Think about athletes. They don't enter a competition casually and hope to peak at the end. They start with focus, precision, and intent because they understand that the beginning sets the tone for everything that follows. The same principle applies to your week. The first actions you take are not isolated, they are foundational. There's also a confidence factor that builds when you start strong. Early progress reinforces belief. You begin to trust yourself more because you see evidence of your capability. That confidence influences your willingness to take on bigger challenges and make bolder decisions. It becomes a cycle. Strong start, increased belief, stronger performance. So instead of approaching your week with the mindset of getting through it, you approach it with the intention of dominating it from the very beginning. You remove hesitation, you eliminate delay, and you step in with purpose. Because when you control the start, you dramatically increase the likelihood of finishing exactly where you want to be. There comes a moment where everything shifts, not because your circumstances suddenly improve, but because you make a decision about who you are, not who you were, not who you might be someday, but who you are right now. And here's the truth most people avoid. Until you define your identity with certainty, your actions will always be inconsistent. You'll act with motivation one day and hesitation the next. Why? Because you're still negotiating with yourself. Let me challenge you with this. Who are you when no one is watching? When there's no pressure, no deadline, no external reward, what standards do you live by? Because that is your true identity. And if that identity is unclear or weak, your results will reflect it. But the moment you decide with absolute clarity, this is who I am, something powerful happens. Your behavior begins to align with that decision. Here's the hook. Your life doesn't change when you set goals. It changes when you set identity. Goals are what you want. Identity is who you believe you are. And every action you take is either reinforcing that identity or contradicting it. If you say you're disciplined but consistently delay action, your mind notices the mismatch. If you say you're focused but allow constant distractions, your confidence erodes. Identity is not built through words. It's built through proof. This is where most people get stuck. They wait to feel like a certain type of person before acting like one. They say, once I feel confident, I'll take action. But it works the other way around. You act first, and the identity follows. Confidence is not a prerequisite, it is a result. Every time you follow through on a commitment, you cast a vote for the person you are becoming. Think about it this way. If you decide that you are someone who shows up no matter what, then showing up is no longer a debate. It's not based on mood, energy, or convenience. It's simply what you do that removes internal conflict. It eliminates hesitation. You don't waste time negotiating with excuses because the decision has already been made. There's also a level of personal power that comes from this clarity. When your identity is strong, your environment loses its influence over you. Distractions don't pull you as easily. Challenges don't shake you as deeply. You become stable, consistent, and reliable, not just for others, but for yourself. And that self-trust is one of the most valuable assets you can develop. But let's be honest, this requires accountability. You cannot claim an identity and ignore the actions that support it. If you decide you are focused, your daily behavior must reflect focus. If you decide you are disciplined, your habits must reflect discipline. There is no shortcut here. The alignment between what you say and what you do is what builds credibility with yourself. And here's something most people don't realize. Small actions matter more than big declarations. It's not the one time you push yourself that defines you. It's the consistent, repeated choices you make every day. Waking up on time, completing what you start, following through when it's inconvenient. These are the moments that shape identity. They may seem minor, but they compound into something powerful. So instead of asking, what should I do today? A more powerful question is, what would the person I'm committed to becoming do right now? That question shifts your focus immediately. It moves you from temporary thinking to long-term identity building. And once you begin operating from identity rather than emotion, everything changes. Decisions become clearer, actions become consistent, progress becomes inevitable because you are no longer trying to become that person. You have already decided that you are. So this week, you don't ease in, you charge in, you don't hope for a good week, you create one, you don't wait for opportunity, you become it. Because when you start your week like a beast, something incredible happens. You start to realize that the power was inside you all along. Now hear me clearly. This is your moment. Draw the line, make the decision, commit with everything you've got, because your life changes the second you stop negotiating with yourself and start commanding your future. So go out there, own your morning, dominate your week, and build a life that demands respect. Your time is now. Your week is now. Your life is now.